everyone. Welcome to Mental Health Bites, where we break down the latest psychological science into bite-sized tips that you can use every single day. In this podcast, we'll cover a timely topic, answer one of your burning questions, and leave you with a wellness tip that you can use every single day to better your mental health. Let's dive right in to the timely topic of today. Today, we're talking about attachment styles and how they affect other things other than what you think usually attachment style is associated with, which is relationships. In fact, attachment styles has a lot to do with your mood, your anxiety, how you regulate stress and difficult emotions when they arise. And maybe that's a little surprising because attachment styles has really been covered so much in social media, in online articles, and it's all about how they affect relationships and particularly romantic relationships. But they actually influence so much more. Your attachment blueprint, which starts to form in early childhood, lays the foundation for how you navigate emotions, cope with challenges, and regulate your nervous system. If you've ever wondered why stress feels overwhelming, why you get stuck in loops of overthinking or self doubt, or why anxiety can feel impossible to control, your attachment style might be playing a bigger role than you realize. The good news: attachment patterns are not fixed. Even if you didn't start life with a secure foundation, you can rewire your attachment system to support your emotional well being. Today, we're going to explore exactly how attachment styles impact stress and anxiety, break down all the science behind it, and most importantly, give you practical tools to build a more secure sense of self. Our attachment styles develop in early childhood based on how our caregivers responded to our needs. Over time, this shaped our internal expectations about safety, connection, and emotional regulation. When stress or anxiety arises, these attachment patterns often dictate our automatic reactions, whether we lean on others for support, shut down completely, or spiral into worry. A securely attached person can usually navigate stress with resilience. But if someone has anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachments, they may struggle with emotional regulation in distinct ways. Let's take a deeper look at how each of these attachment styles impacts the way we handle stress, regulate emotions, and experience anxiety. A securely attached person generally has a balanced approach to stress. They trust that they can handle challenges and know that seeking support doesn't mean that they're weak. Their emotions feel manageable because they've learned early on that expressing their emotions is safe. When anxiety arises, they can acknowledge it without letting it spiral out of control. Someone with anxious attachment tends to experience stress in a more amplified way. Their nervous systems are often on high alert, constantly scanning for signs of rejection or abandonment. Emotionally, they feel intense highs and lows depending on how connected they are to others. They may rely on external reassurance to regulate their emotions rather than developing internal coping mechanisms. When anxiety strikes, they tend to ruminate, overthink, and fear worst case scenarios. A person with avoidant attachment, on the other hand, tends to suppress stress and emotions. Growing up, they might have learned that showing vulnerability led to rejection, so they become experts at pushing feelings aside. While they may appear calm under pressure, their nervous system still experiences stress. They just don't show it outwardly. Instead of processing emotions, they may distract themselves with work and productivity or other types of numbing behaviors. Anxiety, when it does arise, is often ignored or buried under their busyness, which can lead to chronic tension and emotional exhaustion. People with disorganized attachment often feel trapped in an internal push pull dynamic. They crave closeness, but they also fear it, leading to cycles of emotional overwhelm followed by withdrawal. Their stress response is somewhat unpredictable. Sometimes it's hyperreactive, other times completely numb. Emotionally, they struggle to trust themselves and others, and their anxiety is often intense and chaotic. They may experience panic like symptoms or dissociate when overwhelmed. These patterns don't just affect personal relationships, they influence how we show up at work, how we handle conflict, and even how we treat ourselves. The key takeaway: the way we learn to attach as children plays a major role in our emotional health today. Let's go a little deeper into how these attachment styles form and what they look like in everyday life. A secure attachment style develops when a child experiences consistent, loving, and responsive caregiving. They learn that their needs will be met, that they're valued, and that relationships are a safe place. In adulthood, they're comfortable with both closeness and independence. They can form deep connections without feeling overly dependent, and they handle stress with confidence, trusting that they can navigate challenges without fear of abandonment. An anxious attachment style typically forms when caregivers are inconsistent, sometimes responsive, sometimes unavailable. As a result, the child learns that love and security are unpredictable, and that leads them to seek constant reassurance. As adults, they may become preoccupied with their relationships, fear rejection, and struggle with self doubt. They often interpret neutral or ambiguous situations, like a delayed text, as a sign of abandonment. Avoidant attachment develops when caregivers are emotionally distant or dismissive. These children learn early on that expressing needs doesn't lead to comfort, so they stop relying on others. As adults, they prioritize independence to the point where intimacy feels uncomfortable. They may avoid deep emotional conversations, downplay their own feelings, and struggle to open up, even to people that they love. Disorganized attachment is often the result of trauma or caregivers who are both a source of comfort and fear. These children grew up with conflicting experiences, leading to an unstable sense of security. In adulthood, they may crave intimacy but find it triggering, leading to unpredictable relationship patterns and difficulty trusting both themselves and others. Here are some public figure examples of attachment styles in action. Adele has spoken openly about her experiences with anxious attachment, particularly how she has struggled with overanalyzing relationships and fearing abandonment. In several interviews, she's mentioned that she used to panic when left alone, experiencing waves of self doubt and emotional highs and lows. Keanu Reeves, on the other hand, has demonstrated traits of avoidant attachment. He has shared how early life trauma and loss led him to withdraw emotionally, often choosing solitude over deeper emotional engagement. While he has worked on reconnecting with others, his tendency to process emotions internally rather than express them openly is characteristic of avoidant attachment style traits. Let's jump right in now to the Q&A section because there's some really great takeaways that I'm going to give you about this listener's question. Today's listener's question comes from Lauren in Oregon, and she says, "Hey, Dr. Judy, I have an attachment style that is probably anxious. I notice that when I feel overwhelmed, I start overthinking, doubting myself, and seeking reassurance from others. How can I stop this cycle?" Excellent question, Lauren. The key to breaking the cycle is to develop internal sources of security rather than relying on external reassurance. So when you notice the urge to seek validation, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what am I really looking for right now? And can I give myself that reassurance that I need? One strategy is to delay reaching out for reassurance by setting a 5-minute self soothing timer. During these 5 minutes, try grounding techniques like deep breathing or journaling to regulate your own emotions. The more you practice self validation, the more secure you'll feel over time. Good luck with that, Lauren, and thanks for your question. Now, let's move on to the practical tip of the day. Today's practical tip is called the Secure Self Method. And I think that it's really interesting that most people, when I talk to them, when I work with them in my practice, they tend to think that attachment styles are completely fixed and that they just have to cope with whatever hand they got dealt with. And that's simply not true. It's always possible, no matter how old you are, no matter what stage of life you're in, to move toward a more secure sense of self. So, the Secure Self Method is a 3-step process designed to help you regulate emotions, manage stress, and feel more confident in your ability to handle challenges without falling into old attachment driven patterns. Step 1, observe your stress triggers. This first step is to identify when your attachment system is activating your stress response. Each attachment style has specific emotional triggers that can send it into overdrive. If you have anxious attachment, your biggest triggers are usually related to feeling abandoned, ignored, or uncertain about relationships. You might notice that your anxiety spikes when someone takes longer than expected to reply to you, or when you perceive emotional distance from a friend or partner, or when you're left to make a decision alone. If you have an avoidant attachment style, your stress often surfaces when you feel pressure to open up emotionally, rely on others, or lose independence. You might notice yourself withdrawing when someone asks deeper, personal questions. You might avoid difficult conversations or feel overwhelmed by emotional intimacy. If you have a disorganized attachment style, your stress response is often unpredictable. You might crave closeness, but also feel overwhelmed or suspicious when you get it. Triggers can include feeling emotionally exposed, fearing betrayal, or experiencing rapid changes in relationships. A helpful way to recognize your trigger is to ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling right now? What thoughts are coming up, and do they sound familiar? And am I reacting based on the present situation, or am I repeating an old pattern? Recognizing these patterns is crucial because once you can name what's happening, you have the power to change how you respond. Step 2, reframe with a secure attachment script. Once you've identified your attachment driven stress response, the next step is to reframe your internal dialogue using a secure attachment script. This means shifting from an automatic, fear based reaction to a more balanced and secure way of thinking. Let's go through specific examples for each attachment style. If you have anxious attachment, you might be thinking, they're upset with me. I must have done something wrong. A secure reframe would be, not everything is about me. I am safe even when others need space. If you have an avoidant attachment style, you might tell yourself, I don't need anyone. It's much easier to deal with this on my own. A secure reframe would be, vulnerability is not weakness. I can allow myself to connect without losing control. If you have disorganized attachment, your thoughts might swing between, I need support right now, and I don't trust that anyone will actually be there for me. A secure reframe would be, I'm allowed to seek comfort while also trusting myself. To help internalize these new scripts, try writing them down and repeating them daily, especially when stress arises. Over time, these secure thoughts will start to replace the old patterns. Step 3, anchor yourself in emotional stability. The final step is to anchor yourself in a secure, grounded state that counteracts your usual attachment driven stress response. Since each insecure attachment style has a different way of coping, the key is to choose an anchoring method that specifically addresses your unique emotional needs. So, for anxious attachment, your goal is to build self trust and internal security rather than depending on external reassurance. Try these 3 anchoring techniques. The first is journal reassurance. Write down what you need to hear from someone else and say it to yourself instead. For example, instead of texting a friend, write, I am loved, I am safe, I am worthy, even when I'm alone. Second technique, meditation for self sufficiency. Practice a guided meditation where you visualize yourself as your own secure base, capable of handling stress independently. Third technique, progressive delayed reassurance. When you feel the urge to seek validation, delay it by 5 minutes. Over time, increase the delay. This teaches your nervous system that you can self regulate. If you have an avoidant attachment, your goal is to increase emotional openness and connection in ways that feel safe. Try these anchoring strategies. The first, body movement therapy. Engage in activities like yoga, stretching, or even walking to reconnect with your body, since avoidant types often suppress emotions physically. Second technique, micro acts of vulnerability. Start small. Instead of deep emotional conversations, try texting a friend something about yourself, not just asking them about them, but actually talking about yourself a little bit more. These small steps toward connection create emotional safety over time. Third technique, music or art therapy. If verbal expressions feel overwhelming, use music or art to externalize your emotions in a less threatening way. If you have a disorganized attachment style, your goal is to create stability and consistency while reducing emotional chaos. These 3 strategies can help. First is a weighted blanket or deep pressure stimulation. Use physical grounding techniques like these to stabilize your nervous system during emotional distress. Second technique, safe person check in. Identify one or two people you trust and set up a predictable time to check in rather than relying on chaotic, last minute emotional support. This is where my concept of core three comes in. So check in with that episode if you haven't seen it yet. Third technique is guided self talk therapy. When overwhelmed, record yourself saying secure statements and listen to them. This helps to reinforce a structured, calming presence. The secure self method isn't about instantly changing your attachment style. It's about building small, daily habits that shift you toward a more secure sense of self. The more you integrate these steps into your life, the more you'll train your nervous system to feel safe, balanced, and secure, no matter what challenges come your way. Thanks so much for tuning in to Mental Health Bites with me today. If you found this video helpful, there's plenty more where that came from. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and leave a comment below with your thoughts or any questions you have. Also, feel free to share this video with your friends and family who might find it useful. Stay tuned for more helpful content, and until then, take care of your mental health.